Blue Moon is brewed with Valencia orange peel and a touch of coriander. It's a creative twist on a Belgian-style wheat ale for a taste that shines brighter. Taste responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
The Don Le Batard Show. You know who I am. You might have seen me on Around the Horn. You might have heard me on ESPN Radio, The Morning Roast with Mina Kimes and Dominique Foxworth, or you might read my work on The Undefeated. Clinton Yates, in for Dan and Stu. I have but one rule. Even though I had a holiday amendment to the rule, this might go on all week. You know, I might extend the deal. Like you see when you're watching QVC and you're buying stuff off of TV. I might extend this deal just for you. Get it on FlexPay. If you come incorrect in my mentions, I will embarrass you in front of your friends and your family, and I will not apologize. But only this week, special deal. If you come incorrect this week, I will not embarrass you in front of your friends and your family. I'll just block you. So, now that that's said, let's get to basketball. Obviously, yesterday was Christmas Day, so there was a whole lot of NBA hoops. For those of you who listened yesterday, I was loud and wrong about the Rockets banging out the Thunder. The Thunder, first of all, that number one didn't even happen. Number two, the Rockets lost the game. So the Arugulas let me down hugely in that regard. Simply because I thought they were going to play a better basketball game, not because I care if they win or lose. But the most important game of the day, in my opinion, is obviously the rematch of the NBA Finals. The Warriors beat the Cavaliers 99-92 in a game that was pretty contentious right off the top. I mean, for those of you who watched this bad boy, there was an outside argument that Kevin Durant was going to get thrown out of the game within the first 5 minutes. All sorts of jibber jabber, if you will. All sorts of back and forth, which I liked. It was respectful. It didn't get to a level that I thought was contentious or even on the other side of it, overly petty. Both these teams seemed to care. LeBron James had talked a lot about family before the game. It seemed like I was of the opinion that he was going to be in attack mode. He was a little bit. It wasn't exactly what I would call a LeBron James banger necessarily. LeBron James tended to have good games on Christmas Day. Kevin Love was the star of the Cavaliers. He finished with 31. Hit 6 threes. So that was a good game for him, although he was only 9 for 25 total from the floor. This game had one obviously big moment, which was that towards the end, Kevin Durant, he's guarding LeBron, coming down the court and offers what I would call a physical defensive play. Now, my Twitter immediately blew up with a bunch of stuff about, oh, this was a foul. He should have gotten the call, this, that, and the third. But look, I don't know where y'all come from. I happen to come from Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, where I'm at right now. By the way, shout out to my Wizards who won yesterday. We'll get to that later in the program. I don't know where I'm ever going to be at the point in my life where I'm going to root for foul calls. Now, we talked about this in regards to football yesterday, and this is sort of tangential, but I'm getting back to it. Like, if at the end of the day, a non-foul is something that determines a game, I will be much happier than if a quick whistle does. Okay? The game is physical. There's enough fouls called in the game as is. And the reason I mentioned the NFL yesterday is because it sort of reminds me of the situation that we had with Kelvin Benjamin in New England, which is who is the person rooting for extra refereeing, such as the one that took away that touchdown. In this case, I'm not rooting for extra foul calls just for the sake of, whatever he did. I don't know. That wasn't a foul. I mean, yeah, okay. If he calls a foul, I'm not going to be mad there, but I'm not upset about the fact that there was a whistle. Let's hear what he had to say, Kevin Durant, that is, to the media about those Twitter comments.
The key defensive play you made on LeBron was out of bounds to the Warriors late in the game. There was a lot of debate on Twitter about whether that was a foul.
On Twitter?
Yeah. Have you heard of it? But did it feel clean? Did you get a replay of it, like in your mind?
It felt clean. It's probably the same play a bunch of those dudes on Twitter probably arguing about in 24-hour fitness that wasn't a foul. So they've been in that position before, but just not on Christmas at the Oracle Arena. So they know if they ain't call it, it's not a foul. But I'm sure if they get that call next week in 24-hour fitness, they're gonna be that it was off, that they called a foul. So keep that on Twitter.
Wow. Okay. Just to be fully transparent, that's the first time I've heard that comment. I didn't realize he went that hard on that. Number one, we got to break that down on multiple levels. Young journos and generally people out there, if you are dealing in pressers with players, politicians, or entertainers who have had problems on a certain social media network in regards to their public image, do not cite said social media network as the platform for the basis of your questioning. He instantly reacted, Durant did, on Twitter. Let us not forget about his burner accounts. Let us not forget about all that other nonsense that he went through. He could have just kept that question to, there was plenty of debate, and moved on from there. That said, as soon as he realized what was going on regarding the social media conversation, you could see, or you could hear rather, the tonality in his voice change to go in attack mode on whomever is having these problems. Not one, but two 24-hour fitness references. And then he makes the point that, yes, I'm in the NBA and you're at the gym. Of course, Kevin Durant, we realize you're in the NBA. I didn't realize we weren't allowed to talk about you playing basketball. I'm not even mad at Katie for that comment. It just seemed so, I mean, that was the quickest shot from the hip that I've seen in a long time. But he's right. They ain't call it. It wasn't a foul. I'm out here trying to play defense. I'm here for more defense and more physicality, not less. So if you're asking me what I thought about that call, I'm fine with it. I don't need extra whistles. As a matter of course, though, KD was up for the challenge of taking on Bron. Let's hear what his head coach, Steve Kerr, had to say about that.
Well, he wants to guard him, first of all. I mean, he asks for the assignment. But it just makes sense. You know, every matchup is different. You know, it makes more sense for them to have LeBron guard Draymond. You know, the last couple of years, it made more sense for us to have Clay on Kyrie and slide Steph over to JR or whoever. So matchups dictate everything for coaches, and it just so happens that, you know, KD is the right matchup for us against Cleveland, and he wants the job.
It was a great defensive game from KD. It was a very good defensive game from the Warriors entirely. That one sequence where Draymond Green swatted, I think it was Thompson. They came back on the other end. Durant got the flush. I mean, which way do y'all want it is, I guess, my question. Do y'all want the NBA to be physical? Do you want the NBA to involve guys knocking each other down? Or do you want to be able to say, oh, these guys are whining, they're complaining all the time? You can't have both, but you've got to choose which one you're going to be happy about, so you don't end up being unhappy about both. I like the NBA with more hands. As a former member of the hands community, less foul calls are better for me, simply as a matter of course. KD played a good game yesterday. KD played the kind of game that made me think that when he needs to focus and he doesn't get off on this nonsense, once again, he can move to the top of the league in terms of being one of the best performers. Problem is, this man can't stop getting technicals. He and Draymond Green lead the league in technicals. They got 8 each. That, my friends, needs to stop. Coming up, going to talk about my Wizards. They got a win in Boston yesterday. I got to admit, I was a little surprised because it was a little unexpected.
Don't forget, you can hear more of my sons Dan and Stu weekdays starting at 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
For those of you who don't know, I live and I work in the District of Columbia. So today I'm in the offices of the Undefeated. And when I walked into the room, I saw that my desk neighbor's desk was occupied. Now, mind you, I'm here all week, and I was here yesterday as well, so I was not expecting to see anyone today. So this is sort of like coming up upon a camp when you think that you're on an otherwise deserted island. So I text one Dominic Foxworth, my co-host on the Morning Roast on ESPN Radio, Sundays, 9 a.m. to noon. That's coming back New Year's Eve, by the way. And I say, yo, your stuff's here, but you're not. What's going on? He texts me back, and he says, my B, doing FT. I'm like, okay, word. So I guess he's upstairs. So I come into this room where I'm getting ready to do this show from, and I turn on the television. I say, oh, there goes Fox. Fox is on First Take. Then I see the two shot with Will Cain. And they were wearing the exact same thing. It's a charcoal type blazer situation with a white shirt and a dark tie. Now, granted, these outfits are not one for one exact. But if you crossed by these two simply looking at a screen on the street, you would assume they were wearing the exact same clothes. I don't know what I would do in this situation. I would not be able to talk for 2 hours wearing the same thing as the person I'm supposed to be debating against. Somebody would have to change. Let's put it on the poll. Which person should change? I don't even remember what the poll question we did was. We tried to figure this out in the break, to be perfectly honest. But we're putting a poll question up because I can't imagine what that would be like. I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't obsess over what I wear on TV, but I certainly don't wear suits. And if I finally went so far to put one on and the person across me had the same joint on, no, couldn't happen. I'm going to try to get Dominique on the program later to talk about this because this is hilarious. Sticking to DC topics, though. Yesterday, my Wizards played against the Celtics. Now, Celtics Twitter knows that I was hard on Danny Ainge over the offseason because I said at one point, and this was before, mind you, the Isaiah trade happened. I said that if I was the Wizards, I would feel as good, if not better, about my situation going forward than the Celtics did. Of course, you know, all sorts of readers and listeners blow me up talking about how could that be top picks and cap space. And my point was they were going to have to turn over their roster entirely because they know that their composition at the time was not one of championship caliber. How do we know that? Well, because they got rocked by the Cavs by 50 points daggone near on their home court in the Eastern Conference Finals. Lo and behold, they actually did what I thought they were going to do. I just did not think it was going to work so well, and I did not think that Boston was going to accept it as well as they did. It happened. And now that team's pretty good. Kyrie's there. They had the unfortunate injury to Gordon Hayward. But everything else that the Celtics have going on, there's nothing to be upset about if you're a fan of that team. That roster is solid. It's just an entirely new group of guys, which is fine. Jaylen Brown has turned out to be a beast. Shane Larkin has been a perfectly capable backup to Kyrie Irving. Jason Tatum is a good player as well. And Marcus Smart is Marcus Smart. Point being, I didn't know what was going to happen when my boys came into the Garden yesterday. Because John Wall has been injured, but he's been back for 5 or 6 games. And this squad has been so up and down, the Wizards that is, that I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I was worried I was going to have to be dealing with Celtics fans in my mentions all Christmas Day. But alas, turns out Zardo's got to win. And they didn't get some crazy nonsense, oh, we had the most insane game of the year from some random guy and then hit a buzzer beater to say a lot. Nah. My boys kind of controlled that game. As in, at no point did I necessarily think they were going to lose. Their biggest lead of the game was 11, the Wizards. Biggest lead of the game for the C's? 5. I was very pleased with that. So Boston Twitter, feel free to hit me up. Because I get a lot of junk in my mentions whenever the C's do anything as much as win 2-3 games in a row. Boys got worked by the Zardos. Let's hear what John Wall had to say on the court with our Jeff Goodman.
John, I know it's a totally different team on the other side with the Celtics, but they knocked you out last year in the Eastern Conference semis in Game 7. What was this win like?
Oh, it was big, man. We haven't won here in a long time. You know what I mean? They're a great team, one of the best teams in the NBA. They kind of been in slow lately, but we know how great they are of a team, how Brad Stevens coaches, and we just try to do a great job of trying to shut Kyrie Irving down in the fourth quarter. He's one of the best clutch players in the league.
How were you able to shut down Kyrie or limit him at least?
We didn't shut him down. He got some looks. He missed some open shots. He hit one big three, then we just tried to deny him as much as possible. But he's a heck of a player, one of the best clutch players we have in this league, and one of the great battles I love to have.
Where do you think this team and yourself are right now? This is just your 7th game back. Where are you at physically?
Well, I'm getting a lot better. I'm off minute restriction. Coach told me to just go out there and play and be aggressive. This is a big win for us. I hope we can use this as momentum going into the new year. And then we got another game on Wednesday. I hope we can win that one.
You went small down the stretch. How difficult is it for teams to stop that small ball lineup of yours?
Well, with us, they do a great job. Me just attacking, trying to get into the paint. I'm trying to find my teammates to let these guys knock down shots. And we did a great job of just closing out the game.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
That was Jeff Goodman after the game with John Wall. Wizards beat the Celtics 111-103. Clinton Yates filling in here on the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. I want to hear one more piece of sound because I talked to PJ Carlissimo, who did the radio broadcast for the game yesterday on the program, and I asked him about this series as a matter of course in terms of the rivalry. And he had a lot to say about it. He was a big fan. PJ's an old school basketball guy who I trust in terms of his basketball opinion more than anybody else. But he's got some feelings on where these two teams are regarding the Eastern Conference.
These two teams are going to be there at the end. I think these two, along with Cleveland and Toronto, to this point, are the class of the East. And it's going to be really interesting to watch because it's been up and down so far for the Wizards. This is a couple steps forward. They need to build on it.
All right. This is the sound of me getting excited. Hey, man, do I realize that Boston is probably a better basketball team right now than the C's? Yeah, on the whole. Do I realize that they obviously don't have one of their best players injury-wise? Yeah, I do. But I also know that I don't think John Wall is entirely healthy. And I also know that the Celtics lost to the Wizards yesterday, which means I'm excited. Santa out here hooking me up.
Catch more of the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz. 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
Joining us right now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line is Tim Legler. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Legs, right off top, what was your favorite game of the day yesterday?
Favorite game of the day, I would have to go with Oklahoma City. I think their win, that was impressive. They're starting to play better. They've been a very frustrating team for me to watch this year. Because, I guess as a fan, I want them to be relevant. I want them to be a legit threat. So we have another team that has the kind of talent it takes to match up with teams like Golden State, Houston, Cleveland, Boston down the road. And they've been really disappointing to me the way that they have managed their offense. But they're starting to get it together. I thought yesterday would be a great test for them to take on a Houston team and see if they could guard them well enough, first of all, and get stops when they had to against a high-powered team like that. And then more importantly, manage late-game possessions on an important stage like that. And they really did a nice job of not settling for bad, quick, contested three-point shots, which has been their MO to this point early in the season. But so that for me was the game I was most looking forward to. And Oklahoma City really played well down the stretch of that game.
Yeah, I was impressed. I haven't liked the blend of that team at all so far this season. I actually still don't necessarily think it's going to work. And I thought the Rockets were going to blow them out. So I really thought that was an important game for them, not just in terms of their standings, obviously, but like you said, to get it together because at some point, the Melo situation has to work itself out. And if they can't manage to get wins while they're trying to figure it out, that's going to be problematic.
No, it definitely. And I think, you look at a situation with Oklahoma City and Paul George, and if this team continued to flounder and not be able to beat anybody good, which they really had struggled with for the first 6 weeks of the season, then you've got to make a real serious decision here on Paul George as you get closer to the trading deadline because, there's a very good chance he leaves in the summer and walks out the door and you don't get anything in return. He might do that anyway, but I think if you give Russell Westbrook every opportunity to have enough talent around and while you have him in his prime, then if they feel like they're a legit contender, they keep Paul George and they go for it. They make a run at teams like Golden State this year, and that's why I was it's important they get it together now. And they're playing much better basketball, 11 out of their last 14. They've gotten wins. They've also beaten, I think, 6 teams that I think will be in the playoffs during that stretch. So they're finally not only winning games, they're beating teams that are going to be in the postseason. That's an important step forward for them. And again, it just came down to me, emotional maturity offensively, trusting each other, not feeling you've got to take a shot right now because you might not touch it again on that possession. I think that's what was going on, a little bit of a competition amongst those guys at different times offensively. They're starting to believe in each other a little bit more, show better patience, better poise in important moments in games because, these games come down to sometimes 5 or 6 possessions determine the entire game, and they're handling those a lot better than they were early in the season.
Tim Legler joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Clinton Yates filling in for Dan and Stu here on ESPN Radio. The Rockets have dropped 3 straight, though. And I'm not saying that's some sort of landslide, obviously, in terms of the streak they went on earlier this year. But is there any sort of concern you have right now for what D'Antoni's doing with that squad?
Not really. And I tell you why. Well, first of all, Chris Paul's been out, and that's a major factor. Obviously, when you get used to operating with a second guy on the floor like that, or in Mike D'Antoni's case, you have the luxury of going an entire game and stagger their minutes at certain times without having to go in a stretch without an elite playmaker on the court, which they're the only team in the league that has 2 guys on that level at that position, then now you're making an adjustment when he's not there, and it might be a little bit different for that team to operate right now. Their defense has not been as good lately, but look, this is not a team that's going to win games because they smother you defensively, but they're better there because they added C.J. Tucker, Bamute, Capella, Ariza. Chris Paul is a guy that's been an all-league defensive player in this league. So they had other ways that they can beat you. And I think that's what's been important for me about this team. That's why they're a more legitimate threat than they were a year ago. A year ago was one way only. It was, being an unstoppable team with a high pick and roll with James Harden, one-star player running that offense. And if you get a team like that in a 2-week period where you play them 5, 6, 7 times, then like San Antonio did last year, you can start to make adjustments and make it more difficult to operate. Well, this year, not only do they have 2 of those guys that can operate that same set, so you don't have to go at any time without one of them. The other thing is they added some guys that will win 50-50 balls for you. They've added some guys that like to get after defensively so they can defend for stretches in games now even if they're not making shots. So you're going to go through ruts in the season, and right now, defensively, they've taken their foot off the gas a little bit. But I think they're a team that ultimately is a much more complete team than last year, and I think they are a legitimate, bona fide contender to go toe-to-toe with a team like Golden State if they get there once again in the postseason.
Okay. All right. Speaking of Golden State, let's talk about that game yesterday. I mean, look, that play at the end of there's a lot there, but I do want to ask you specifically in terms of gameplay and refereeing. That play at the end of the game, Durant's being physical on defense the whole time. I am of the school of thought where less foul calls are better. I'm very rarely going to get mad at a non-call, even if it is the wrong call necessarily. What do you think of that in terms of how it's officiated and how Durant's gotten back on D in terms of his attitude these days?
Well, yeah, first of all, I played in the decade of the 90s, and it was a lot more contact defensively that was allowed. I'm a fan of that for the most part. The problem I have is when a play like that, and look, I'm not blaming the officials for missing it in real time because LeBron James is the kind of player that's really hard to officiate because he plays through so much contact because of his strength. It's hard for officials sometimes to tell how much he was really affected by it. Shaq was the same way. And guys like that play through it anyway and still, for the most part, function at a high level or get off a quality shot despite the contact, it's hard sometimes for officials to know how much he really got hit. But in that particular case, when I see the replay and you look at what Durant did, which is, he reached across his body, makes contact with his left arm, his left shoulder, and his right arm, you're now affecting a guy's ability to extend his arms and get the ball up to the basket at a critical time in the game. So in the replay, which we all have the benefit of, the officials can't reverse a foul call, and I understand why that's the case. We have the benefit of sitting back as analysts and watching it 5, 6, 7, 8 times in slow motion, and you can see, to me, clearly that is a foul. Right. And LeBron James has gotten the benefit of the doubt of a lot of those throughout his career. But yesterday there were a couple of plays that trip on the left wing as well. You know, if there's enough contact there to call something, but not so obvious that, you know, people are losing their minds because it's an egregious miss. But to me, the layup, that's just a call that needs to be made because you're talking about a guy trying to shoot a layup at a critical time in the game, and both arms are hit to the extent that he can't maintain control of the basketball. That needs to be a foul.
Last thing I'll ask you, Legs. Your old team, my hometown team, my favorite team, the Wizards, got a nice little win in Boston yesterday. I'm not saying that this necessarily portends anything for any sort of playoff series, but what do you think about where they've been so far and where John Wall has been since he got back from injury?
Yeah, I think this is a team that's been inconsistent because of who's been out there for them this year, who's available, and also their play. This was a team that was incredible the second half of the year last year, particularly last 2 months at home. They were almost unbeatable. And you come into the season, and I'm expecting them to pick up where they left off. They get very slow out of the gate, so very inconsistent. And what they showed me yesterday was what we know about them, but we don't see it often enough, which is their top six can match up with anyone in the Eastern Conference, and maybe anyone in the league on a given night. We know about the backcourt, but when you get games like that out of Otto Porter and Gortat chips in with double figures, double-double, and then you get 14 out of Morris, 16 from Oubre off the bench, their top six guys all in double figures. They've got as much talent as anyone throughout their top six in the Eastern Conference. And on a given night, they can handle anybody. Now, let's see if they can string some of those together and play that way every time they go toe-to-toe with one of the big boys in this league. And then we'll take them more seriously as a threat. Because to this point in the year, we've given them very little attention, and they haven't deserved it. They're starting to now get it together a little bit, and a game like yesterday makes everybody take notice. And now we're going to see, can this be something to give them some momentum where they string off, 10 out of 12 or something like that, like these other teams have all done that we consider threats and contenders. Washington wants to be in that mix. Well, then they've got to go ahead and put together a string like that and knock off some playoff teams during that stretch. And we know the talent is there. The question is, do they have the mindset, the maturity, and the consistency where we actually believe that Washington can make a serious run in the postseason in the Eastern Conference?
He's Tim Legler. He's an ESPN NBA analyst. Thank you, Legs.
My pleasure.
You want more of the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugats? Tune in starting at 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPNU.
Harden strides up the middle. Looks to step back on Robertson, who stays with him. Dancing on the dribble. Elevates, fires a three. Blocked by Robertson. Westbrook the loose ball. At midcourt. 2-on-1 with Robertson. Whips the baseline to Dre. Up and under, lays it in. He blocked the shot. He scoops and scores. Thunder by 5. 112-107. 21 seconds to play. Timeout Rockets.
That's from WWLS 98.1, the sports animal. Heck of a game there. All right, Thunder Twitter. I was loud and wrong about the Rockets. I thought the Arugulas were going to crush them, the Thunder that is, yesterday. I was wrong. Chris Paul didn't play. Automatic change to that situation. Definitely thought something was going to go different in terms of that. But right now, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Let's hear Tim Legler. Last segment said something pretty real about what could be happening in OKC regarding Paul George.
If this team continued to flounder and not be able to beat anybody good, which they really had struggled with for the first 6 weeks of the season, then you've got to make a real serious decision here on Paul George as you get closer to the trading deadline because, there's a very good chance he leaves in the summer and walks out the door and you don't get anything in return. He might do that anyway, but I think if you give Russell Westbrook every opportunity to have enough talent around and while you have him in his prime, then if they feel like they're a legit contender, they keep Paul George and they go for it. They make a run at teams like Golden State this year, and that's why it's important they get it together now.
I know that's not what y'all want to hear. I know, Thunder fan, that's not what you want to hear. Right when you got your nice little signature win of the season, right when you got your nice little setup over the Rockets, who are a good team that has it together, they got some injury problems. I'm not saying this idea hadn't been floated before, but I'm saying that if the OKC Thunder are in a situation where they've got to contemplate what they're doing regarding Paul George at the trade deadline, oh, what a mess it would be for this season to go up in smoke like that. I said from the jump I didn't think this was a good blend. I didn't like the way that Carmelo fit into that offense. Their ISO game was just doing too much. But if they're going to play defense the way they really can when Paul George gets after it, one of the better defensive players in the league as far as superstars are concerned, well then, he's got to stay there. But if it doesn't work at all offensively, and the fact that he won't even tell them, allegedly, before the trade deadline, this is not good. We know Paul George's history on this matter. Look, I didn't blame him necessarily for how he left Indiana, although a lot of Indiana fans hate him for it, sort of holding them over the coals, acting like he didn't know where any of these reports were coming from. That was not really great. But if this becomes a mid-season problem for the Thunder to the point that they deal him just to prevent him not walking for anything, my goodness. Can Thunder fan take any more? I mean, expectations and hopes were sky high when that guy came to town, Paul George, that is. If he ends up having to walk away from this team, basically because Melo didn't fit, I do not wish that upon Thunder fan. The amount of turnover, the inability to attach to superstars not named Russell Westbrook as a result of Kevin Durant leaving, I get it. There's some raw emotions there. If Paul George ends up with just what is effectively a cup of coffee in Oklahoma City, I feel bad for those guys. But again, maybe it's for the better. Because the last team Paul George left is better now that he's gone.
You can listen to the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugats 10 to 1 Eastern on ESPN Radio, and you can watch on ESPNU.